I'm Eisen, the Chancellor of JTS, and I'm happy to welcome you to a rather exciting evening that came about because about 2 weeks ago, Tova Birnbaum, who you're about to meet, called us and said, would you like to host Chaverat Knesset Ruth Calderon? And we figured, if Ruth can teach Talmud in the Knesset, maybe we can have Ruth teach a little Talmud at the Jewish Theological Seminary. Be thrilled to go host this event. So that's what we're going to do this evening, an event co-sponsored by JTS and the World Zionist Organization. I'm going to do two brief sorts of introductions. First, introduce the two people seated on my left, and then give a little bit of a more substantive introduction to the program that we're going to have this evening. Dr. Ruth Calderon, whose face is familiar to many of you who did not know her before by the YouTube, which featured her teaching the Knesset a few weeks back, serves as a Knesset member in the 19th Israeli Knesset as part of the Yesh Atid party. She's one of Israel's leading figures, spearheading efforts to revive the, quote, Aron HaSforim HaYehudi, the Jewish bookshelf, Hebrew culture, and a pluralistic Israeli Jewish identity. In 1989, Dr. Calderon was a pioneer when she established the first Israeli secular, pluralistic, and egalitarian Beit Midrash for women and men. With an Orthodox colleague, she then went on to host a TV show on classic and modern Jewish texts, published several writings and books, and in 1996 founded Alma, Home for Hebrew Culture, located at the heart of Tel Aviv, where it serves as a cultural and studies center for Hebrew culture and the Jewish text. Dr. Ruth Calderon is the author of The Market, the Home, the Heart, a personal homiletic reading of Talmudic legends, published in 2001. She got her PhD in Talmudic literature at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. She's also a graduate of the first class of the Mandel School for Educational Leadership and the recipient of the prestigious Avichai Prize in recognition of her contribution to the propagation of the legacy of Israel. Sitting to Ruth's left is Tova Birnbaum, the East Coast Shlicha of the World Zionist Organization Department of Diaspora Activities. She is one of the founders of the Yeshiva Chilonit, the secular yeshiva, at the Bina Center for Jewish Identity, Hebrew Culture, and Social Justice in Tel Aviv. Tova is a teacher of Talmudic rabbinic literature, a Judaic studies lecturer, and a theater midrash workshop facilitator. Among other things, Tova is an actress, a Jewish performance artist who is primarily inspired by Jewish text and Jewish ritual, and has been performing in performance art festivals in Israel and outside of Israel. She holds a BA in psychology and Jewish philosophy from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and an MA in theater from Tel Aviv University, and now lives in New York with her husband, Yishai. So let's just say hello to Ruth Calderon and Tova Birnbaum, and thank you for being here. So what's going to happen in a few minutes is that Ruth is going to teach a text taking off from Megillat HaAtzmaut, the Israeli Declaration of Independence, and then she's going to dialogue with Tova, and then the two of them are going to dialogue with you. I just thought that I would make the event more JTS-like by talking briefly for about 2 minutes about two different texts that are crucial to us, that bear on the issues before us. One, as many of you know, in 1906, Solomon Schechter issued a statement about Zionism. He did this against the wishes of the Board of Trustees of the Jewish Theological Seminary. He did this in a brilliant way, in a way that I think transcends a lot of the divisions between Dati and Chiloni, between Israel and diaspora, that currently mark the Jewish world, and sometimes we might say plague the Jewish world. Among other things, he said to me personally, after long hesitation and careful watching, Zionism recommends itself as the great bulwark against assimilation. Then he went on to talk about what he meant by assimilation. And Zionism declares boldly to the world that Judaism means to preserve its life by not losing its life. It shall be a true and healthy life, with a policy of its own, a religion wholly its own, invigorated by sacred memories and sacred environments, and proving a tower of strength and of unity, not only for the remnant gathered within the borders of the Holy Land, but also for those who share by choice or necessity, who by choice or necessity shall prefer what now constitutes the Galut. And then Schechter goes on and talks about Galut and says in words that mean a lot to me and have become somewhat famous in the history of Jewish thought, the term galut is here loosely used, expressing, as I have often heard it, the despair and helplessness felt in the presence of great tragedy. The tragedy is not imaginary, it is real, and it exists everywhere. And he goes on and says what a tragedy it is to see a great people and a great civilization not able to stand on its own 2 feet and know who it is and stand up for itself and what he believes in. And near the conclusion to the essay, he says, the foregoing remarks have made it clear that I believe that I belong to that class of Zionism that lays more stress on the religious-national aspects of Zionism than on any other feature peculiar to it. The religious-national aspects of Zionism. And of course, when Mordechai Kaplan identified as a Zionist, he did so very much as Schechter's students. But notice this is the religious-national aspect. And Schechter didn't use the phrase, but makes the point, no Judaism without Jews, no Jews without Judaism. We will protect both by building up our Holy Land, and therefore Schechter was going to support the Zionist enterprise. Ben-Gurion gave a remarkable text, which I recommend to everyone who hasn't read it. It's there in translation in Arthur Hertzberg's great anthology, The Zionist Idea, a text from 1944 called The Imperatives of the Jewish Revolution. The Imperatives of the Jewish Revolution. And what Ben-Gurion makes clear in this essay, that Jews are not just declaring independence from Britain when we established Israel, we are declaring independence from Galut. What, therefore, is the meaning of our contemporary Jewish revolution? It is the revolt against destiny, which the vanguard of the Jewish national renaissance has been cultivating in their small country for the last 3 generations. Our entire history in the Galut has represented a resistance of fate, a resistance of fate. Ben-Gurion, in this particular essay, does not dismiss Galut as worthless, which he was sometimes prone to do elsewhere. He takes pride in the resistance to fate, which the Jewish people had engaged in for 2,000 years. Galut means dependence, not only material and political, but spiritual, cultural, and intellectual dependence. The meaning of the Jewish revolution is contained in one word, independence. Independence for the Jewish people in its homeland. Dependence is not merely political, economic, it is also moral, cultural, and intellectual. It affects every limb and nerve of the body, every conscious and subconscious act. Independence, too, means more than political and economic freedom. It involves also the spiritual, moral, and intellectual realms. At the end of the essay, he says there are 2 imperatives of the Zionist revolution. The first imperative of the Jewish revolution is therefore to guard jealously the independence, the inner moral and intellectual freedom of our movement. And the second indispensable imperative of the Jewish revolution is the unity of its protagonists. I cannot think of a more fitting introduction for Professor Ruth Calderon. Welcome to JTS.
It's usually the Israeli. Erev Tov, thank you very much for coming. I want to say b'shvach achsania, thank you, Professor Schorsch, for having me here some decade ago when I was a student, and I did a lot of my learning up here in the library. And when I came today, I think I didn't visit for a few years. When I came in, for a moment I wasn't sure if I'm now or then, and it was a place that I loved and that gave me a lot of comfort, and thank you. And thank you, Arnie, if you're back here, for the generous introduction and for the long years of friendship and support. I thought a lot of what can I share with you today. I don't want to just teach. Teaching for me should be connected to the moment, to be relevant for something that is happening now. So if you don't mind, I'd like to share with you two episodes that happened to me in this new job I surprisingly found myself. I had no idea that Yesh Atid will have so many seats. And 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 I had this wonderful job at the National Library in Israel. I was head of the Department of Culture and Education. And when Yair Lapid, and we are friends for many years, when he went into politics, I was so respectful of the fact that he is actually doing it and that good people are going to go into politics, that I said, yes, I'll come with you, but I was number 14, and I thought, you know, there's no way I'm getting in, and I will support them until the elections, and then I go back to the library. And then one person stepped out, and I became 13, but still it was fine. And then suddenly, a few weeks before the elections, we felt that there's an amazing momentum wherever we went, young people and so many people. And then I think I was the only one the evening of when they declared the numbers. Somehow everybody knew, and I went the day of the election to Jerusalem and then to Bet Shemesh to be with people there. I came home and I went to sleep, and they said we should come at 10 in the evening to see the outcome together. And I thought it's just a social thing, so I didn't think I have to be there on time. At about 9:30, my phone started ringing. So I finally picked it up, and she said there were young, I don't know exactly what's their role, but they told us what to do all through the. So the one that I was answering, she called me and she said, "Where do you think you are? Get dressed immediately and come here." And I said, okay, and I got dressed and I went to Bet Sokolov. It's like a journalist place, and I saw hundreds of journalists and television and radio, and I thought, what is going on here? Now, only later I understood that everybody knew, and I didn't. And then they said, we have 19 seats, and I was shocked twice, of course, one for Yesh Atid and then for my own life. But I'm very grateful, and I found it, since I went in, a great opportunity of adult education. And I want to share with you, it is. I want to share with you two episodes. The first one was the day we took our oath. It's very moving. You have to stand up and say, "Mitchayevet ani," and everybody does that. And your legs shake, and children are there, and families, and the president, and all the judges, and the president comes with horses. It's a very big deal. And they got to it's by alphabet, and I'm Kuf, so it's in the end. And got to my time. I got up somehow, and I said, "Mitchayevet ani." And then they all finished, and Peres, the president, stood up, and we all stood up and sang Hatikva. And it was a very moving Hatikva to do it in the Knesset with the symbols and the flag. And I thought, if my parents could see this, my father would be so proud. And then I noticed on this side of my eye that all Arab Knesset members walked out except for one. And they do not stand to sing the Hatikva. And I was thinking about that, and I went back home, and I think the next morning at night, I wrote on my Facebook page that I was sorry to see our colleagues, the Arab Knesset members, walking out on a tikva. And I asked my friends if anybody knows, because I knew there were efforts done and that people were thinking about it, so I asked who knows what was done to try to make the national anthem more inclusive. And I knew I didn't exactly know, but somebody suggested that there will be two anthems, and somebody suggested more words and another verse, and all kinds of suggestions. And I went to sleep. I woke up in the morning. I saw that some people answered me, and I was like, before, I thought I want to do something about it, but I thought before I'm doing anything, I need to know what already has been done. as the Mishnah teaches us. So in the morning, I was in the far north, and I had to go back to Tel Aviv, and before I took off, I suddenly again had a phone call from the press person of Yesh Atid, and he said, "What did you do? The whole Facebook is burning," and the minister from Shas, Yishai, says that you suggested to take the word Jew out of the national anthem. And I was like, where did he, of course he didn't read Facebook. Some assistant told him that I said something, and so I'm driving home, and I hear on the news, Knesset member Ruth Calderon suggested to take the word Jewish out of the national anthem, and I'm like, so I went online and I said, I never said this. I said that, they are citizens of Israel, and if they cannot identify with the national anthem, we should think about it. It's something to think about, and I didn't say, God forbid, to take away the word Jewish. I'm a very proud Jew. I'm very national, but I was just so it was okay, and the journalists and the people of the press were generous and let me speak, and it was the end of that. A few days later, I was in the Knesset, and the minister Ishai walks in, and I go to him and I say, Sar Ishai, you did albanat panim to me. Why did you say that I said to take the word Jewish out of the... So he said, didn't you say it? And I said, no. So he said, so I apologize. Politics. So that was the first thing, and it was, afterwards I got a lot of fire about that, and I understood I'm touching something that is very sensitive, and not that I have a solution, but I felt that it is my place to notice it. Someone in the room is not comfortable, and they are working with us, and they're part of us, and they're 20% of the people, of the citizens. And so then the right kind of marked me that I'm suspicious. Then we're only there for 2 months, I think 1 month. Then just a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I was invited to a conference in Ramle. Ramle is a kind of a developing town, and it's very challenging, and I know young people are working there to help it kind of build, so I thought it's important to go to Ramle. And I said, yes, I'll come. Little did I know that the conference was organized by the Ramle mayor and by 2 other organizations, one of which is called Komemiut, and it's very far right. Very, like Bennett's people, but the very far right, and they have some rabbis that said terrible things about Arabs and about homosexuals and about everything you can imagine they said. And I didn't know that, but on Facebook, 2 days before, or the day before, I got something like 100 messages with a symbol of Kahana and with all kinds of terrible pictures of me, saying, you must not go there. If you go there, you approve of them, you give them legitimation. And there was another Knesset member that they did the same to, and he decided to not go from the Labour Party. And I thought a lot, and I went into their site, and I spoke to friends, and I spoke to Judge Dorner, the Supreme Court judge that was going to speak there. And I decided to go. I decided that I want to speak to people I don't agree with. I believe in machloket, I believe in dispute. And I believe in speaking to Palestinians. So I will not speak to Israelis, to Jewish Israelis. But it was scary. And the left gave me hell. The Israeli left gave me hell. Like, it was very unpleasant and scary the night before. Then the morning comes and I have to go there to be with the far right, and that was a bit scary on the other side. Outside of the place of the conference where youth movement young people, like you, but I think they had white sroch. And they had a sign saying, Ruth, don't go in there, you don't know what you're doing. So I went to them and I told them, what I think and why I'm going there and what I believe in. So they said, can we take a picture with you with the signs? So we did. Then I went in, and it was not comfortable. It was what you call out of your comfort zone. It was. Mainly men, mainly very Orthodox men. I knew that everybody's very right-wing, and I was the only woman that spoke there except for the judge, Dorner. But I stayed, and they were very polite, and they showed me very nice hospitality, and I saw how important it was for them, because they saw what the left has done to me. They wanted to show that they are, beseder. And they were really very nice. I mean, nothing unpleasant happened to me. And then we sat on a panel. There was Harav Gafni from Degel HaTorah, an ultra-Orthodox, Haredi, very outspoken, quite frightening to get into his mouth. He's very cynical, very funny, very many years in Knesset. And on my left side was Rabbi Shapira, who is one of the rabbis with very racist, chauvinist writings, and a professor from university. And so we spoke about equality. I think they wanted us to quarrel about equal שוויון בנטל, equal burden, sharing the burden. But I didn't want to fight, and I spoke about Tzelem Elohim, and that every human being's value is equal to everyone else. And I said that homosexuals and lesbians are also creations of God, and if somebody has a complaint, he can go to whoever made them, and I see them as equal value of people. And then the Rav Shapira, he couldn't stand it, and he started yelling at me and said, "You are not Talmida Chachama." So I told him, "You say Talmidat Chachamim." But he really gave it to me, and he said it's Chilul Hashem, or I don't remember what, and you can't say that in the Bible. And okay, so I got that, and then, but there was something very small, again, that I noticed. There was water on the table and glasses, so I always need water, so I poured a glass and I gave Gafni, and I poured one for myself, and then I wanted more water, and I asked Shapira if you could. So he poured water to me. Later, people told me that has never happened, that we share the same water. And so, except for that yelling, everything was okay. I went home, and at night, again, Facebook was all over, and this time with many Haredi people, Orthodox people, and people from the right, and students of Shapira. And I said at some point, I think that being a rabbi has to do with midot also. The next morning, Rabbi Shapira calls me up, and he apologized. And I was very moved by that, and I felt he's true. And he asked me to go on the radio together, on Galei Tzahal. And I was happy to do that. And he spoke in a very different way, and he said it was very painful for him, and he doesn't want to use this language, and so forth. And then I'll tell you more about some legislation I'm trying to do, and the man on the radio asked him, would you sign it? And he said yes, which was a big surprise. And that is the second story I want to tell you. I felt very happy that I went. But it's only maybe 2 months that I'm in this world, and already both sides are very unhappy with me, which I think means that I'm in the center. The thing that was the most moving is, of course, that when we gave our first, it's not even a speech, how do you call it? Whatever, maiden. When you have to speak for 10 minutes. I didn't know what to do with it. And I texted Yair Lapid, who was sitting in front of me, and I asked him, is it okay if I teach? Because that's what I'm used to do. And he said, okay, as long as you don't make them chevruta and... which I thought is a reasonable idea, but I said, okay, I won't do it. I did bring text, and I gave whoever wants. I asked the woman that is in charge of the Knesset, I asked her, is it okay if I go with the book? She said, but you can't show it. So if you noticed, I never lifted it up. And that I asked if can I give handouts, and she said, you can't give it. Only people who want to take it will take it. So I said. So I never thought that anyone out of that room will ever hear it. I have no idea who put it on YouTube, but it was amazing how the world now is connected and fast, and it's really, I don't think I've digested that experience yet, that people in this country and in Europe and in Australia and Orthodox people that I would never get a chance to meet, saw my speech and are talking to me, and I'm happy and overwhelmed by that. So now I would like to get to my dream of what to do next on the Knesset. We'll get into details with Tova later, but one thing that I'm dreaming about is to use the Declaration of Independence of Israel and to try to pass it as a basic law, something like constitution. You know, that we don't have... You're laughing because you don't think it will happen? Thank you. So, I'm doing it because in the last Knesset, there was a law on the table that is saying that whenever, you know, Israel is trying to be Jewish and democratic. And this new law is saying that whenever there will be conflict between Jewish and democratic, always the Jewish part will win. And it has all kinds of details that are not democratic and worse. And I was afraid of this law, and part of the coalition agreement was that this time they will pass it. So we were sitting in the Yesh Atid room together, and I said, some of the left of Israel wants Israel to be democratic and not Jewish. And some of the right of Israel wants it to be Jewish and not democratic. And I believe it can be Jewish and democratic. So Yair said, so come up with a new law. So I said, okay. And I again, took a lot of advice, and I worked with Professor Moshe Halbertal, who's a good friend and a teacher. And we thought that maybe it will be possible to pass the Declaration of Independence and to sign it again, to do something that is less legal maybe and more like a ceremony, like a tekes, like a ma'amad. But the bottom line is to try and have a base again of this idea that is very challenging in everyday life of democratic and Jewish. And I understand everybody has the Declaration of Independence of Israel.
They took it on their own.
They took it, only the ones who wanted. And I would like to take advice from you. I want to read one part of it and think together, is there a chance that this will have a majority in the next 4 years in Israel? Because I believe if it will, something very important is going to happen, both on our side of Jewish state and on your side of Jewish existence. So I'm asking our friend Zoe to come up and help me read the English, and I'll read the Hebrew.
I'll just introduce Zoe. Zoe Zik, she's the Associate Director of the World Zionist Organization Department of Diaspora Activities, and a colleague and a brilliant person. Zoe.
Thank you, Zoe, and I want to say to the Lilith people that there's girl power here. Nachon? On stage. Okay, thank you, Arnie. A big feminist. Okay. I'm beginning on, I don't know where is it with you, because I read the Hebrew, you'll find it. It's not the beginning, I would say it's in the middle. מדינת ישראל תהא פתוחה לעלייה יהודית ולקיבוץ גלויות. תשקוד על פיתוח הארץ לטובת כל תושביה, תהא מושתתת על יסודות החירות, הצדק והשלום, לאור חזונם של נביאי ישראל. תקיים שוויון זכויות חברתי ומדיני גמור לכל אזרחיה, בלי הבדל דת, גזע ומין. תבטיח חופש דת, מצפון, לשון, חינוך ותרבות. תשמור על המקומות הקדושים של כל הדתות, ותהיה נאמנה לעקרונותיה של מגילת האומות המאוחדות. מדינת ישראל תהיה מוכנה לשתף פעולה עם המוסדות והנציגים של האומות המאוחדות בהגשמת החלטת העצרת מיום 29 בנובמבר 1947, ותפעל להקמת האחדות הכלכלית של ארץ ישראל בשלמותה. אנו קוראים לאומות המאוחדות לתת יד לעם היהודי בבניין מדינתו, ולקבל את מדינת ישראל לתוך משפחת העמים. אנו קוראים גם בתוך התקפת הדמים הנערכת עלינו זה חודשים, לבני העם הערבי, תושבי מדינת ישראל, לשמור על שלום וליטול חלקם בבניין המדינה, על יסודות אזרחות מלאה ושווה, ועל יסוד נציגות מתאימה בכל מוסדותיה הזמניים והקבועים. I'll take a little more. אנו מושיטים יד לשלום ושכנות טובה לכל המדינות השכנות ועמיהן, וקוראים להם לשיתוף פעולה ועזרה הדדית עם העם העברי העצמאי בארצו. מדינת ישראל מוכנה לתרום חלקה במאמץ משותף לקדמת המזרח התיכון כולו. אנו קוראים אל העם היהודי בכל התפוצות להתלכד סביב היישוב בעלייה ובבניין, ולעמוד לימינו במערכה גדולה על הגשמת שאיפת הדורות לגאולת ישראל. Now the English.
The state of Israel will be open for Jewish immigration and for the ingathering of the exiles. It will foster the development of the country for the benefit of all its inhabitants. It will be based on freedom, justice, and peace as envisaged by the prophets of Israel. It will ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex. It will guarantee freedom of religion, conscience, language, education, and culture. It will safeguard the holy places of all religions, and it will be faithful to the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. The State of Israel is prepared to cooperate with the agencies and representatives of the United Nations in implementing the resolution of the General Assembly of the 29th November 1947, and will take steps to bring about the economic union of the whole of Eretz Israel. We appeal to the United Nations to assist the Jewish people in the building up of its state and to receive the State of Israel into the community of nations. We appeal, in the very midst of the onslaught launched against us now for months, to the Arab inhabitants of the State of Israel to preserve peace and participate in the upbuilding of the state on the basis of full and equal citizenship and due representation in all its provisional and permanent institutions. We extend our hand to all neighboring states and their peoples in an offer of peace and good neighborliness, and appeal to them to establish bonds of cooperation and mutual help with the sovereign Jewish people settled in its own land. The State of Israel is prepared to do its share in a common effort for the advancement of the entire Middle East. We appeal to the Jewish people throughout the diaspora to rally round the Jews of Eretz Israel in the tasks of immigration and upbuilding, and to stand by them in the great struggle for the realization of the age-old dream, the redemption of Israel.
I think it's a beautiful text. I don't know how much it's studied as text, but unfortunately, you see in the bottom, there's all the people that signed on it, and there are a few rabbis and some ultra-Orthodox, thank you, Zoe, ultra-Orthodox rabbis. But today, I am not sure, I am hopeful, but I don't see, it won't be easy for people to sign a basic law that will say equal rights, social and political equal rights to all its citizens with no exception of religion, race, and sex. תבטיח חופש דת ומצפון, freedom of religion and and will guard the holy places of all religions. There's a lot of work to do, but I believe, I know that both the Arabs will not agree with it because they do not want a Jewish state, they want a state of all citizens, and the Haredis won't agree with it because it says freedom of religion, and we do not have freedom of religion at the moment. Or freedom from religion, both. But if there will be a majority in the center that will sign this, I think it'll be really a big step forward of the State of Israel. I think it's very interesting for you living in a democratic country that is not Jewish, that doesn't have one national identity, but is open to different nationalities. I'm not sure that this experiment is possible, that we are trying to be a national homeland like Sweden, like there are places in the world, Belgium, that is democratic to all its citizens, including minorities. I think it's a very brave try, and I hope we will be able to do it. The balance is very difficult. What is very important to me in this declaration is a few things. The word equality, shivyon, that does not exist in any basic law of our constitution that is being built. There's no shivyon, so you, as a woman, you cannot fight for equality, different citizens cannot claim equality, and the ultra-Orthodox parties never agreed to sign this again because they don't want this equality. But what's very important for me here is that you, Jews that do not live in Israel, are a necessary part of building this country. And I think it's not said enough, or it's not mudgash enough, it's not stressed enough, how important it is that all the Jews in the world will see this country as theirs in some way, and will take part in building it. I mean, if there is a possibility for us to pass this declaration as a basic law, it will only be if you will press or be heard in a very serious way, because the government does listen to, especially to North American Jews, because that's, the big force. And in this thing, I just want to tell you, the way I see our job in the Knesset, you are very necessary. And I think this common aim of having the state of the Jews that will be a light upon the nations, or just be a normal, good state for its citizens, and something that you can be proud of and enthusiastic about, and that we will interest you. Yair Lapid always says that he learned to speak because if he would not be interesting, his father would go away. So he had to be interesting quickly. And I feel that Israel is not intriguing young people here or any people here anymore, and that it's very important that we will be interesting to you. So I will end with a little bit of Talmud. You have the other, whoever wanted has the other side of the page. It's the very famous story of when Moses went up high to receive the Torah, the Ten Commandments. I have the Hebrew, but you have the English, and if you want, we can read it again in English. I want to focus on just one episode of this story. I'll read it once. אמר רב יהודה, אמר רב, בשעה שעלה משה למרום, מצאו לקדוש ברוך הוא, שיושב וקושר כתרים לאותיות. אמר לפניו, ריבונו של עולם, מי מעכב על ידך? אמר לו, אדם אחד יש, שעתיד להיות בסוף כמה דורות, ועקיבא בן יוסף שמו, שעתיד לדרוש על כל קוץ וקוץ תילין תילין של הלכות. אמר לפניו, ריבונו של עולם, הראהו לי. אמר לו, חזור לאחוריך. הלך וישב בסוף 8 שורות, ולא היה יודע מה הן אומרים. תשש כוחו. כיוון שהגיע לדבר אחד, אמרו לו תלמידיו, רבי, מניין לך? אמר להן, הלכה למשה מסיני. נתיישבה דעתו. חזר ובא לפני הקדוש ברוך הוא, אמר לפניו, ריבונו של עולם, יש לך אדם כזה ואתה נותן תורה על ידי? אמר לו, שתוק. כך עלה במחשבה לפניי. I'll take it only until here and I'll try to read the English. I don't have it. I only have the Hebrew. Oh, here it is. Will someone do me the favor of reading the English? Because it's, or maybe I know it by heart.
Rab Judah said in the name of Rab, when Moses ascended on high, he found the Holy One, blessed be he, engaged in affixing coronets to the letters. Said Moses, Lord of the universe, who stays thy hand? He answered, there will arise a man at the end of many generations, Akiva ben Joseph by name, who will expound upon each tittle hips and hips of laws. Lord of the universe, said Moses, permit me to see him. He replied, turn thee round. Moses went and sat down behind 8 rows. Not being able to follow their arguments, he was ill at ease. But when they came to a certain subject, and the disciples said to the master, whence do you know it? And the latter replied, it is a law given unto Moses at Sinai. He was comforted. Thereupon he returned to the Holy One, blessed be he, and said, Lord of the universe, thou hast such a man, and thou givest the Torah by me. He replied, be silent, for such is my decree.
For today, I'm sure you know the end is very sad and very beautiful. But I just want to take this episode, I'll just tell the story so we all, if you missed the last episodes, that we'll all be on the same page. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, has all the people down on Sinai, and he leaves them and he goes 40 days, 40 nights up to meet God. And he gets up there, and the writer, the amazing artist that is anonymous and writes this story, says that he goes up and he sees God. Now we know, we just spoke about it, that you cannot see God, but he does, and not only does he see him, he sees him sitting down and working as a scribe, something very human, very like a working man that is sitting and still decorating the letters. By the way, when I worked at the National Library, I tried to find manuscripts, ancient manuscripts with decorations, and I learned that there were none. There were a lot of discussion in the whole world between people that do philology and, how do you call it? They have a special name, and תכף מלאכי בית אריה, קודקולוגיה not calligraphy, no, לא חשוב. That they know how old the scripts are. And the best scholar in the world said, I'm sorry, there were no decorations. It's not possible. And I thought, so how come the person that wrote this story, how could he come up with the idea if he never saw? כי קישוטי אותיות. So it was a long story. Then I understood that there was a change of, but I'm getting into academics and it's not for today. There was a change of letters for the first time and the second time, and then it could be, anyway, it could be understood what he saw. It's not like the ones that we know with the Shin and the Lamed. It's not those decorations. It's little, like kotzim. In the new alphabet that was accepted, had little kotzim. Anyway, and when I worked at the library, I could show here too. You can do it and see the most ancient manuscript that can show this. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. He goes up there and he sees God sitting down and working, and he says to him, "You are the master of the universe, and you created the whole world in 7 days, and you didn't finish 10 commandments? What did I ask for? People are waiting downstairs. You know, there's a deadline, and you said to come today, and what's keeping you?" He doesn't say what's keeping you, he says who is keeping you? Why is it, you know, whenever we hesitate to give something to end, you know, to give your dissertation or your work, it's always because of someone that will read it. It's someone that you have respect to, and that you're afraid that maybe it's not good enough for his eyes. So Moses asked God, who is it that you're working, you know, extra hours for, and you don't finish 10 commandments, and most of them is cut paste. It's like. So God says there is a man that is going to be, it's like I have already the protagonist, but I didn't put it into this season. It's going to be in the next season. There is a man who's going to be in 7 generations. אדם אחד יש, עתיד להיות בסוף כמה דורות? כמה דורות. And his name is Akiva ben Yosef. And he is going to use each of these little kotzim and learn from them heaps and heaps of halachot. So I have to do it exactly like mutzpan, right? So Moses, you know, with a dress and the cotton beard of ceremonies in Israel, you always become Moses when you finish primary school. So it's with a yuta and a beard. And he looks at God, and, you know, we know that in the Bible it's just you and me, just God, and Moses is his favorite, his beloved, and all his life is given to doing God's work. And suddenly he hears that there's someone else. And he asks the question of everyone that understands there's someone else in a relationship, and asks, who is it? Show him to me. What does he have that I don't have? And God says, okay, you want to see him? Go back. He goes back to the future. This was the first one. He goes to the future and sits in the last row of Rabbi Akiva's yeshiva. And this is what I wanted to say. He has no idea what they're talking about. They read, they learn, they study Torah, but they do rabbinics. And they do Mishnah and Talmud. Talmud is not written yet. They are doing it. And Moses is sitting there with a dress and a beard, and he doesn't understand the word. And he's completely broken from it. Tashash kocho. He says, what's all my life's mission if in a few years they're going to do, you know, they're Reformed Jews. They are changing everything. And this is not Torah, and it's not authentic, and nobody remembers me, and everything is wasted. And then one of the scholars asked Rabbi Akiva, this thing that you just said, how do you know it? From which verse in the Tanakh? What's the pasuk that you are holding to say this? So Rabbi Akiva said, this thing is not from a pasuk. This is halacha leMoshe miSinai. We know that there are some 7 things that are halacha leMoshe miSinai. And then Moses is listening, and he says, oh, he said Moshe. It's me. They remember me, and this Torah that they're doing is not completely not connected to what I gave, and nacha dato, התיישבה דעתו. then he goes back to God and he says, I think it's a little manipulative. He says to God, if you have him, why do you need me? Like, it's like fishing for compliments. Like, say why you need me. And God does not answer manipulations, and he says, shut up, which is, the English is very polite. It said, be silent, but it doesn't say be silent. It says, shtok. Shtok is shut up. It's rude, it's strong. This is the only two shut-ups that I know of in the Talmud that God says to anyone. And this shut-up, I think, is a kind of a place to open this story and understand this shock that I think I saw in the eyes of the ultra-Orthodox in the Knesset, and I see many times with, I don't know if you use the word religious, but yes, people, halachic people that are looking at the phenomena of the renaissance of Judaism among non-halachic Jews, like Tova and Bina and the secular yeshiva and Alma and Elul, and there are now 100 places in the country that are studying this way. And they look at us and they don't understand what's going on. And they think that what we do is completely not connected. And I hope and I believe that if we speak together enough, the divisions will begin to fade away. I'm not a believer, I'm sorry to say it in this house, I don't believe in denominations. I don't think there's enough power of Judaism in the world to be divided. I desperately need you, and I think if we are all together, we would be stronger. And I think this is a time when these people, Moses is the personification of written Torah, Rabbi Akiva is the personification of oral Torah, and this writer is making like a duel between them. And it's very clear that the writer is letting oral Torah win, which is radical and a revolution in its time. And to say that Rabbi Akiva is closer to God than Moses is unheard of. That God has written the Torah and gave it to Moses, but he had Rabbi Akiva in his mind, is something really very brave to say. And I think in every generation there's a new, the ones that were Rabbi Akiva become Moses, and then new Rabbi Akivas come and give them a hard time, and then they become Moses, and tradition is always changing and becoming new. And I want to end this part and just say that I hope the Rabbi Akivas and the Moseses will understand that it is the same Torah, and that it is Torat Chaim for all of us, and that if we let each other understand it and live it the way we must, the way it is authentic to us, we will have a very good, a hopeful, a new kind of Jewish existence. I just want to say, ending this, that I'll say it again, later. So, Tovale, I'm giving the
Thank you, Ruth. Before we'll start our conversation, I do want to say that this is really an amazing honor to sit here with you, Ruth, on the same stage. Actually, it is like a full circle for me, because 5 years ago, Ruth and I and a few other people from the Jewish Renaissance in Tel Aviv came here to the JTS to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the State of Israel. It was Yom HaAtzmaut, exactly 5 years ago, and which was very interesting because, Ruth, I don't know if you remember that, you taught the story of Rav Rechumei, and you taught it as a jumping point to talk about the relationship between Israel and the diaspora, about the woman that is sitting and waiting, and Rav Rechume studying Torah. And that was a beautiful symbol to talk about the relationship between Israel and the diaspora. And I think those two subjects of the character of the Jewish state, and the other thing, the relationship between Israel and diaspora, and both together, those are the two things that I would be very happy to talk with you about. This event is a collaboration of 4 organizations. Ruth and I talked 2 weeks ago. It was Pesach, and I called Professor Arnie Eisen, and I said, let's have an event with Ruth Calderon. And they said, oh, that Israeli, how do they think? In 2 weeks, how are we going to organize an event? And I found partners. The JTS said, yes, we will host. And this is really, really exciting.
I just want to be, to give respect to the people that brought me here. The collaboration of the West Side, of the JCC and the other synagogues that are celebrating Yom Ha'atzmaut, and this is part of that. JTS is part of that 29 institutions that are celebrating Yom Ha'atzmaut together. So, and this is like an opportunity on that.
Exactly. So we're talking about bridges, we're talking about partners and collaborations. So we also have the American Zionist movement co-sponsoring this event. We have Karen Rubinstein here, who is the National Executive Director of the American Zionist movement. She's right here with us and a very, very close partner. We're doing wonderful things together. We're very grateful for that. And another partner is Bina, the secular yeshiva, who I was part of the staff for many years. And one last thing before we start this conversation, I want to share with you that the World Zionist Organization, whom I'm a Shlicha of, the Diaspora department in the last 2 years has a very specific goal. We are focused on creating opportunities for a larger and more complex discourse about Israel. We are committed to bringing more and more voices to the table. And a part of that is the Voices Fellowship that is starting in 2 weeks. And I want to welcome Voices Fellows who are here with us. And we're very, very excited to have you all here. And the fellowship really invites young adults and young professionals to discuss Israel and to reshape the discourse about Israel. And having Ruth here tonight is really part of it, reshaping the discourse about Israel. So, Ruth, I would like again to relate to your inaugural speech, which I look at it on YouTube every day, more and more and more views. It's very, very impressive, Ruth. And I want to ask you something very basic. You talked about Limud Torah, you talked about text study, but the core of what you said was about shaping the character of the Jewish state. And here you are, you have 4 years ahead of you.
We hope.
We hope. And I want to ask you a very simple question, looking ahead 4 years from now at the character of the Jewish state. What do you see? What are you hoping to change? How would you want to influence the character of the Jewish state?
I think I said some of it. I would hope, and I'm trying to say realistic things. First thing I'm trying to do is to get equal funds to non-Orthodox Jewish learning, to pluralistic Jewish learning. Today it's completely unfair and not just. So that's the first thing. We are going to try and build a department at the Ministry of Education that will deal with pluralistic learning, and that it will be possible to study Torah, not only if you're an Orthodox man. And the bigger thing is, of course, trying to legislate something, hopefully Megillat Ha'atzmaut, but even something in the middle, some compromise that will give strength to the balance between Jewish and democratic. My work, I think it's the same work that I do the same project all my life. It is about Jewish identity, both of Jews in Israel and Jews in the world. And I think the Knesset is a tool to try and do this.
And we're here sitting in Manhattan in New York and talking about the relationship between Israel and the diaspora. And I'm curious to ask you, how do you see the character of the Jewish state? How is it influencing the relationship between Israel and the diaspora?
Well, there's a lot of work to do. I think today, the Jewish identity of Israel is still, how would I say, sick with the disease of the separation between Jewish and Israeli, which is something that started when the country was founded, and it was happening because I think the founding fathers and mothers were very ambivalent about their parents, about their families, about the former life, and they tried to cut away from it and to build themselves as new Jews in a new country. And there was a very strong separation between Hebrew and all the other languages. I remember my parents wouldn't speak German or Bulgarian at home. It was a shame to speak Yiddish or to be galuti. It was not called diaspora, it was called galut. And it was judgmental, very judgmental, and it was the weak ones as opposed to the strong ones. It was very adolescent. And I think Israel is becoming mature. And people understand that you can't be a teenager forever. You don't want to be a teenager forever. You see people that are 80 years old and they're still with shorts and sandals. I don't, enough. There's a time to even wear a suit. It's beginning in the business world, and slowly it will. It's warmer, so you can have a warmer suit, but to dress as a grown-up. And I think together with being grown-ups, personally or nationally, Israel started to reclaim the history and the text and the rabbinic text that were always connected to the diaspora. These are people that are not like us. We study only Bible, and we call our children names from the Bible, and we're all heroes, suntanned and strong and builders, and they are Luftmensch, like the Chagall people that are floating in the air, and they're intellectuals, and they don't work their fields. And 60 years go by, and we don't work the fields. The Thai people are working the fields, and the Russian people are taking care of the sick. The Israelis became very West Side Jews, very similar. And once you are, and you understand that you are, you suddenly realize that you have the 10 tribes that you lost, and that people that don't live with us in the state are a part of us that we cannot live without. So I think this is what's going on. I think this is going on for the last 30 years. You are not 30 years because you're young, but all our professional life we've been doing, and there's a zeitgeist, there's a spirit of the time that is now ripe. That's the only way I can understand it, because 20, 30 years ago when I started working, you couldn't imagine a television show of Judaism. It's only for religious people. They had this Friday night, they had these 2 candlesticks and a rabbi, and he would preach. And no one of the non-halachic world would deal with this material at all. Today, you cannot open the radio or television or music or concerts without something of piyut or Talmud or or something else coming to you through all ways of culture. And this is a very big deal. And that is like, what is zeitgeist? It's something that kind of warms the land for something new to grow. So this is what I hope. And if not in 4 years, then in 8 years. And if not in 8 years, then in 12 years. But I believe it's happening. And again, it needs you. It's not going to happen on one side. But I believe there are partners here.
So yeah, I really want to stay on that point of you saying we need you. And this evening is about building bridges. I want to ask even more specifically, and we are now in the end of Rosh Chodesh Iyar. This morning again, we had a prayer of the Women of the Wall again, all the drama again. And I want to share it with you that as a Shlicha, I am amazed by how in so many American communities, people are so passionate and so involved, especially in this issue, especially about religious pluralism in Israel. And my question is to you, what you think the role of diaspora Jewry, or maybe even more specifically, you mentioned how powerful American Jews are sometimes in the reality of Israel. What role do you think American Jews should have in designing or shaping the character of the Jewish state?
I'd like to start with the Women of the Wall. I changed my mind about that issue when I started working as a Knesset member, when I understood that there was a Supreme Court ruling that said that they cannot do it. And the minute there is a Supreme Court or even a court ruling that said that you cannot do it, I believe you should not do it. I believe you should go and do fair legislation. This is what we need to do, and to make a ruling that is just. But until we do, I don't think it's the right thing to do to make the police have to chase them away because, we have to obey the law. This is not a serious thing to say there's a ruling, but I don't accept it. Having said that, and I do not go there, and I don't think it's right for Knesset members to go there, because we are הרשות המחוקקת, we are the lawmakers, and we cannot go and make fun of laws. But having said that, I think the way the Kotel, the Wailing Wall, and other holy places are run is a disgrace and a chilul Hashem gadol. And I believe that it should not be a synagogue, and it should not be run by one rabbi, and that the Kotel, and I hope we will be able to do this, will have a few sections, and each kind of Judaism that wants to express itself, it will have a place at the wall. It's, we all know that it's not the wall, it's the under the wall, but there, in the place that we were hoping for and praying for all the 2,000 years of Gola, and not by the Robinson, it's symbolic. It's not about they need to touch a stone. It's about they are part of a holy place. And holy places should be sacred, should be, first of all, beautiful, and give you a feeling that you can be authentic. You cannot, my daughter, you go with school, you go to the Kotel, it's part of, I don't remember which grade. And when she got there are ladies that are in charge of tzniut. And they put, how do you say tzniut? Modesty. But tzniut is harder than modesty. And so they put a skirt on her neck and a skirt on her waist. And she was walking there with two skirts. And she told me, this is terrible. How can you even think of praying when someone that you never saw before and is very strange to you tells you that the way you are is wrong, and you wear someone's skirt on your neck, and it's not new. And this is, if you want to find the way how to make young people never go again to the Kotel, this is the way. It's very efficient. Today, the Kotel is not a place for me. I cannot go there. I mean, if I want to feel close to any kind of presence, I go up to Har HaBayit, where we are not allowed to pray, because the Kotel is occupied. And I feel we have to free Jerusalem. So I hope I'm not saying something, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I just want to say that there are other people who want to be part, and this is not a way to be inclusive.
We are sitting here in a Beit Midrash, and in your inaugural speech you taught Torah, and we just studied Torah together, Masechet Menachot. And I'm very curious to ask you about the way you study Torah. We're both coming from the movement of Jewish Renaissance in Israel, and we're both studying Torah, but I don't know if we would agree on what kind of practice is that. Your inaugural speech really started a very, very interesting, sometimes a bit even intense dialogue about the nature of the text study. Is it a religious practice? Is it a secular practice? And you yourself talked about your upbringing as Jewish Zionist, religious, traditional, secular, religiosi. Okay, and if someone, I mean, religiosi in Hebrew is not religious. Religiosi in Hebrew is a spiritual attempt or something like that. And my question to you is really, when you are bringing a Jewish text into the public realm and speaking about it in the Knesset or wherever, and I know this is your tool, is this a secular practice for you?
No. Torah for me is Torat Chaim. It is the inspiration of how to be a mensch, how to be a person, how to be a mother, how to be a friend, how to live. And I don't think it is either religious or secular. I think it's a Jewish way of living. It is maybe the most important thing in my life and the way I make decisions and take advice from classic text. I told you before, every morning at 6 before I take my dog out, I put one Mishnah on Facebook. And I have a few thousand friends, and we study together all day. By the evening, there's maybe 200 back and forth talks, and people from here, and people from Europe, and Haredi people, and all kinds of people are studying together. And that comes up again and again when yeshiva scholars, when they read the Mishnah in the morning, they never read it what we call barefoot. They always, when they see it, they already see everything that was written about it. And I try to, first of all, have it on my tongue. It was my decision about a year ago that I cannot wake up and see the news. It's always terrible. You wake up, you're still, before your first coffee, and you see all the terrible things in your face. And I thought, I don't want to start my day this way. And what can I do in the morning before news? Because, it's not our decision that the first thing you will see in the paper is something terrible. So I thought, what could be sweet? And I thought, Mishnah. So I just put one morning, and slowly we became a big community of learning that. So what do I do there when I do it? I don't do it, how will I say it? I don't do it as Torah study. That's my life. My life is built, this is the language of my life. This is how I think. This is how I try to be inspired, to make new things. This is the language that I, thank God, after 30 years, it's now on my tongue. This is what comes up in dreams or in, that's something you wake up and you have a phrase on your mouth. That's how the rabbis say. that you wake up with something like music, like songs that you know by heart. And that became my Teivat Tehuda, like the music instrument has the, I don't know how to say it. So I don't want to be divided by, I'm not halachic, I'm not a little halachic. It's not that I do a few mitzvot. I don't have rabbinic authority in my life. I wasn't raised in rabbinic authority. It's not something that I gave up. My father and mother don't even know of it. It's like, it was never present in the way I was brought up. I took it in the positive, not in the negative. I wanted my Jewishness to be thicker, to be richer. And it is rich by language. Shulamit Ar-Even, an amazing writer in Israel, once said, the borders of your mind are the borders of your words. You cannot think of something that you don't know the word for. And when I know more words of the Jewish world, my soul, my world expanded, like I opened another room, many rooms, in my soul. So did I answer?
I think so, and I think this is very interesting to think about when we're talking about bridges. Maybe expanding the Jewish language in Israel would also open bridges to Jews around the world.
But I'm sorry, I didn't say, you asked what can people do to help us, and I don't want to let you go so easily. I believe classic text is a common ground for all of us all over the world. But I believe, and excuse me for saying that, how will I say it in a soft way? I would be very appreciative if more Jews in the world would study Hebrew. Because I think without Hebrew, studying classic text is like taking a shower with your clothes on. It's not the same thing. If you think that shtok is how did he say? Be silent, you miss the whole story. And so I think if we would have a common language, we would be much closer.
Common language.
Not only English.
So Hebrew and also Judaism, both common languages.